The studio lights burned hot, but what made the room truly boil wasn't the spotlights, it was the clash unfolding in front of millions. The audience had barely settled into their seats when the tension snapped. Donald Trump leaned back in his chair with that familiar smirk, arms folded like a man untouchable, while Denzel Washington sat upright, gaze locked, his voice steady but brimming with controlled fury. "Your family name," he began, his tone sharp enough to slice through the cameras, "doesn't represent America. It stains it." Gasps erupted instantly, a ripple moving through the crowd. Trump's smile faltered, only for a second, but in live television seconds are eternity. Denzel pressed forward, his words low and deliberate, no theatrics, just impact. "When people hear Trump, they don't think of leadership, or honor, or sacrifice. They think of scandal, greed, and self-interest paraded as patriotism. That is not legacy, that's a dynasty of disgrace." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was suffocating. Viewers at home froze mid-bite at dinner tables, thumbs hovered over screens, because the impossible had just happened. Someone had told Trump, to his face, that his name itself was the problem. Trump straightened, eyes flashing, but Denzel didn't give him room to fire back. He raised his hand slightly, commanding the space. "I grew up respecting what a family name should mean. Sacrifice, work, honor passed from parent to child. But what have you passed down? Not duty, deals. Not values, vanity." The audience stirred, torn between shock and anticipation. The control wasn't in Trump's hands anymore. Denzel had seized it with one sentence, and suddenly, every eye in the room saw the power shift. Trump leaned forward now, palms pressed against the desk, his voice louder than the applause sign blinking above the crowd. "That's fake news, Denzel. My family built businesses, created jobs, contributed more than most of Hollywood ever has. You don't get to rewrite history." His words came quick, biting, but Denzel didn't even blink. He let the outburst settle like dust after a storm, and when he finally spoke, it was with calm precision. "You talk about building, Mr. Trump," Denzel replied, his tone unwavering. "But buildings without foundations collapse. Your empire was built on shortcuts, bankruptcies, and bailouts. And now you want to claim it as proof of greatness? That's not success, it's survival dressed up as triumph." The audience reacted with a mix of gasps and cheers. Some clapped nervously, others leaned forward as if witnessing something forbidden yet necessary. Trump waved a hand, trying to dismiss it. "That's nonsense. People love me. Look at the crowds, the rallies. They know my name means strength." But Denzel leaned closer, his voice low and piercing, every syllable striking harder than Trump's volume. "Crowds can be fooled. History cannot. Legacies aren't built on applause. They're measured by what endures when the noise dies. And when people look back at your name, they won't see strength. They'll see shame." The camera cut between their faces, Trump flushed, jaw tightening, Denzel composed, unshaken. For the first time, the former president's defense looked thin, fragile under the weight of truth spoken without theatrics. The audience sensed it too. This wasn't just another spat. This was a dismantling. The dynasty Trump boasted of was being stripped bare, live, under the glare of lights too bright to hide in. A hush settled, the kind that makes microphones seem louder than hearts. Denzel didn't raise his voice, he lowered it, forcing the room to lean in. "A family name is supposed to be a promise," he said, eyes never leaving Trump. "A promise that when your kids wear it, it stands for service, not shortcuts. For truth, not spin. For country, not convenience." He tapped the desk lightly, not for drama, but as punctuation. "But you turned your name into a shield, something to hide behind whenever accountability knocks." Trump scoffed. "Accountability? I've been the most investigated man in America and I'm still here." "Being still here isn't a merit badge," Denzel replied. "It just means the bill hasn't come due yet." He slid a slim folder across the desk, headlines, quotes, receipts, not shouted, just shown. You call it success when doors open for your family because of proximity to power. Where I come from, we call that something else. And everyone who worked 2 jobs and still can't buy a home knows exactly what I mean. The audience murmured, teachers, veterans, nurses in the crowd nodding like they had been personally named. Denzel pressed on. You talk about loyalty, but you confuse loyalty to your name with loyalty to this nation. Patriotism isn't a brand, it's a bill paid in sacrifices you never wrote. The people who carry this country don't have last names on buildings, they have calluses, folded flags, and hospital bracelets. Trump tried to laugh it off. Dramatic. Hollywood. Reality, Denzel shot back, calm as a judge. You inherited advantages most Americans can't even imagine, and you still sold grievance as gospel. If your dynasty were truly strong, it wouldn't need to be defended by grievance, rage, or slogans. Strength is quiet. Yours is loud because it's hollow. Cameras caught everything: Trump's blink, the tight jaw, the half-swallow that betrayed the hit. Denzel didn't gloat, he simply let the silence sit. Your family name doesn't lift people, he finished. It leans on them. And America is tired of the weight. The crowd's silence broke into uneasy applause, some clapping out of agreement, others out of sheer disbelief that someone dared say it so plainly. Trump adjusted his tie, his trademark gesture when cornered, then fired back, "You're just another actor playing tough guy. I lived it. I sat in the Oval Office. I carried the weight of this nation on my shoulders. What do you know about responsibility at that level?" His voice carried heat, but his eyes flickered with the first sign of real unease. Denzel leaned forward, his posture sharp, commanding. Responsibility? His tone cut like a blade. Responsibility is burying friends who wore the uniform while politicians cashed in on their service. Responsibility is watching communities crumble while leaders argued over tweets. Responsibility is telling the truth even when it costs you everything. And you, he pointed slightly, not for theatrics but for emphasis, you've turned responsibility into a brand, something you slap on hats and sell at rallies. That's not leadership. That's a hustle. The audience gasped, and for a moment, Trump faltered. He tried to smile, but it came out brittle. People believe in me. They chant my name. They know what I represent. Denzel's reply was almost a whisper, which made it hit harder. Crowds chant at circuses too. Doesn't make the clown a king. The studio froze. Some laughed nervously, others sat stone still. The camera zoomed in, catching Trump's tightened grip on the desk, knuckles pale. Denzel continued, steady and unrelenting. A dynasty that feeds itself while leaving others starving is not an achievement, it's a crime dressed as legacy. And when you call it greatness, you insult every name carved into a headstone for freedoms you didn't earn. The weight of the words hung heavy. Trump looked ready to lash out, but the power in the room had shifted. Denzel hadn't just answered back, he'd peeled away the armor Trump had wrapped himself in for years. And America was watching, transfixed. Trump's lips curled into a thin, forced grin. He shook his head, trying to regain control of the narrative. You think you're some kind of moral authority? Please. You read lines written for you. I wrote history. Presidents write history. His voice grew louder, fists thudding lightly against the desk for emphasis. I took on China, I rebuilt the economy, I put America first. That's what my name stands for. And you? You're just lecturing. The audience stirred, some nodding, others crossing their arms. It felt like a moment Trump could seize, until Denzel answered. He didn't raise his voice, he lowered it, calm and precise, like a surgeon with a scalpel. You put America first? He asked, almost incredulous. No, you put your name first. Your brand. Your family. Every policy, every rally, every deal, it wasn't about America's future, it was about the Trump dynasty. You turned the presidency into a family business. And family businesses don't govern nations, they bleed them. The words landed heavy, the crowd leaning forward as if struck. Trump tried to jump in, but Denzel didn't pause. You want to talk about writing history? Fine. History remembers leaders who build bridges, not walls of grievance. History remembers presidents who sacrificed for people, not people sacrificed for presidents. When students open textbooks years from now, your chapter won't read like greatness, it'll read like a warning. The audience broke into applause this time, loud, defiant, unstoppable. Trump's eyes darted, unsettled by the very crowd he thought he commanded. His jaw clenched, but Denzel wasn't finished. And let's be real, your family's name isn't being carried by respect. It's carried by controversy, scandal, and lawsuits. That's not a legacy. That's a liability. The camera cut to Trump, who leaned back in his chair, lips pursed, the smile gone. For the first time, he looked cornered. Denzel leaned back too, not triumphant, but steady, as though stating facts no one dared to say until now. The energy in the room shifted again, the people were no longer waiting for Trump to strike back. They were waiting for what Denzel would say next. The moderator, sensing the rising tension, tried to steer the conversation to safer ground. Let's keep this focused on policy, he stammered. But the audience wasn't interested in policy points, they were glued to the firestorm playing out in front of them. Trump seized on the pause. See? They always try to silence me. They don't want me to speak the truth. He jabbed a finger toward Denzel. This guy wants to lecture me about legacy? My family's name is iconic. Hotels, towers, golf courses, worldwide recognition. That's not a stain, that's a symbol. Denzel didn't flinch. He let the claim breathe for just a moment before responding with quiet ferocity. Symbols don't save lives, he said flatly. Symbols don't keep food on the table or roofs over families' heads. You can plaster your name on towers, but if what happens inside those towers leaves people broken, exploited, or bankrupt, then that name is nothing but hollow gold. And hollow gold doesn't shine, it corrodes. The audience murmured, soft at first, then growing. A few people even clapped. Trump's face reddened, and he tried to interject, but Denzel pressed on. You call it recognition. I call it notoriety. You think putting your name in lights makes it respected. But let me tell you something, respect isn't what you demand, it's what you earn. And your dynasty has done nothing but take. Trump slammed his palm on the desk. That's a lie. I've given more opportunities to Americans than Hollywood ever dreamed of. People admire me. They look up to me. Denzel leaned forward, his voice a calm blade. They don't look up to you, they look past you. Past the slogans, past the headlines, past the scandals. And when they do, what they see isn't strength. It's desperation, an empire clinging to relevance by selling anger. The moderator's attempt at control vanished. The crowd roared, half in shock, half in approval. The camera zoomed in as Denzel held Trump's gaze, unblinking. The stage felt less like a debate and more like a reckoning, and for the first time, the man who once commanded entire arenas with chants of his name looked visibly diminished. Trump leaned back in his chair, trying to regain composure, but his jaw stayed tight, his eyes darting toward the cameras as though searching for a lifeline. Desperation? He barked. You think I'm desperate? I had the most powerful job in the world. I was the leader of the free world. People begged for my endorsement, begged to be part of my movement. You wouldn't understand because you've never been in the trenches like I have. Denzel's response came slow, deliberate, every word landing like a stone dropped into water. You weren't in the trenches. You were in the spotlight. There's a difference. Real leaders aren't measured by rallies or ratings, they're measured by the lives they improve when the cameras are off. And your cameras never turned off, because without them, your so-called power vanishes. The audience hummed with agreement, their energy shifting harder in Denzel's direction. Trump's face grew redder, his voice louder. I rebuilt America's economy. I made this country stronger. People miss me. But Denzel shook his head, calm, cutting through the noise. Strength isn't measured by volume, Mr. Trump. It's measured by the silence of children who finally get to sleep safe at night. By the steady paycheck a father can count on. By the dignity a mother doesn't have to beg for. And under your watch, too many Americans lost those things. That's not strength, that's betrayal dressed as bravado. Gasps spread through the room, and then applause swelled like a wave. Trump tried to overtalk it, pounding the desk, repeating slogans, but his words sounded thinner, weaker, echoes of rallies long past. Denzel didn't raise his voice once, and that contrast cut deeper than any shout. He leaned slightly forward, eyes locked on Trump, voice firm but low, as if addressing not just the man across from him, but the millions watching at home. Your family name doesn't carry this country, it drains it. And history won't remember chants or towers. It will remember how a dynasty confused power with service, and pride with patriotism. That's your legacy. That's your stain. The crowd erupted, not in divided noise this time, but in thunderous applause that nearly drowned the microphones. Trump's hands twitched against the desk, his practiced smirk gone. For the first time, he looked like the one on defense, and Denzel looked like the prosecutor who had just laid the case bare. The moderator's voice cracked as he tried to wrestle the show back under control. Gentlemen, let's move forward, but the moment was gone. The audience had chosen where their attention belonged, and it wasn't on the moderator's notes. It was locked on Denzel, who sat poised, his hands calm on the desk, his presence unshaken. Trump leaned in, his voice rising like he was back at a rally. You don't speak for America. You don't represent the people. You're an actor, a performer, feeding lines to an audience that doesn't know better. You'll never understand what it takes to lead. He jabbed the air with his finger, the heat of his words echoing across the studio. But Denzel didn't flinch. He waited until Trump's words finished rattling the air, then spoke with a steadiness that made every ear tune in. I don't need to play president to know when a man dishonors the title. Leadership isn't about yelling the loudest, it isn't about plastering your name everywhere, and it sure isn't about treating the presidency like an inheritance to pass down to your children. His gaze narrowed. It's about carrying a weight that belongs to all Americans, not just your circle, not just your dynasty. And you failed that test. The crowd gasped, then clapped hard, the sound cutting into Trump's attempts to talk over it. The camera zoomed in on his face. Red, lips twitching, fists tightening against the desk as though holding on to control with every muscle. Denzel leaned in slightly, lowering his tone until the audience had to lean forward too. You talk about legacy, but legacies aren't built on shouting slogans. They're built on sacrifice, on service, on humility. Things you never gave. You claim your family represents strength, but what you've shown this nation is arrogance. And arrogance doesn't build, it breaks. The words rang heavy, the studio caught between awe and tension. Trump sat frozen, his mouth half open, no retort immediately ready. For a man who lived on comebacks, the silence was deafening. The applause grew louder, and this time, it wasn't scattered, it was unified, almost defiant, as though the audience itself was standing behind Denzel's words. The camera cut between them, Trump visibly shaken, gripping the desk, Denzel, calm, composed, but sharp, his eyes fixed like steel. The contrast told the story better than any headline could, one man unraveling, the other unmoved. Trump finally found his voice, but it cracked at the edges. You think you're better than me? You think some Hollywood speeches make you more American than I am? I gave my life to this country, I fought for it in ways you can't even imagine. He slammed his fist on the desk, the microphones trembling with the force. People don't want lectures. They want strength. They want a fighter. And that's me. But Denzel didn't take the bait. He sat still for a moment, letting Trump's outburst echo into silence. Then, with his voice calm yet razor-sharp, he said, strength isn't measured by how hard you pound a desk. It's measured by whether your people can still stand after you've led them. And under you, Too many Americans fell. The audience erupted into murmurs, some clapping, others whispering, the weight of his words settling like a gavel in a courtroom. Trump leaned forward, almost snarling. "You don't know what it's like to sit in that chair. To face enemies, to make impossible choices." Denzel met his glare, unwavering. "I may not have sat in that chair," he said, each word slow and deliberate, "but I know this: a true leader never treats the people he serves as pawns in his game. You treated America like your stage, your brand, your dynasty's playground. That's not leadership, that's exploitation." The crowd's applause built again, louder, rising into cheers. The moderator tried to interject but was drowned out entirely. Trump's face flushed deeper, his jaw clenched, his hands gripping the desk so tightly his knuckles turned white. And then Denzel delivered the line that split the air like thunder. "Your family name doesn't inspire, it warns. Every time it's spoken, people don't think of honor. They think of scandal. They think of division. They think of a legacy that stains the very flag you claim to defend." The room froze. Even Trump couldn't immediately fire back. His mouth opened, then closed, his chest heaving with the effort of holding himself together. The audience reaction was seismic. Some gasped audibly, others cheered, and a few even stood, clapping with the weight of agreement. It wasn't just a debate anymore. It was a trial, and in that moment, it was clear who the jury in the room believed. The studio had become a battlefield. Not of fists or chaos, but of words that cut sharper than steel. Trump, his face red and his fists still trembling on the desk, leaned into his microphone one last time. "You want to talk about legacy? You want to talk about family? My name is known around the world. Presidents, kings, CEOs, they all know Trump. That's not shame, that's greatness." The audience sat silent for a beat, waiting. Then Denzel leaned forward, his eyes locked, his tone calm but blazing with conviction. "Greatness isn't about being known, it's about being remembered for the right reasons. And right now, your family name doesn't lift America. It drags it down. People don't see honor when they hear Trump. They see lawsuits. They see corruption. They see a man who divided his own people and called it leadership." The audience erupted, clapping so hard the moderator threw up his hands, unable to restore order. Trump tried to shout over the noise, "Fake news. Lies. You're jealous." But his words were swallowed by the roar. Denzel didn't shout. He let the moment breathe, then delivered the final blow, steady and clear. "History doesn't care about your towers, your rallies, or your brand. History only cares about truth. And the truth is simple: you were never fit to carry this nation. You were never worthy of the title. And America deserves better than the stain of your dynasty." The studio exploded. Some in the audience stood to their feet, clapping, cheering, chanting Denzel's name as Trump sat frozen, lips tight, jaw quivering. The camera zoomed in, capturing the exact second his smirk disappeared, replaced with the unmistakable look of a man cornered with no escape. The moderator finally called for a break, but it didn't matter. The damage was done. The clip would explode across every platform within minutes. The headline was already writing itself: "Denzel levels Trump on live TV." And as the cameras cut, Denzel leaned back in his chair, silent, composed. He didn't need to say another word. The room had already spoken for him. Truth isn't loud, and it doesn't need to be rehearsed. It simply stands, even when lies shout around it. Tonight, you witnessed more than a debate, you witnessed clarity. And clarity doesn't fade when the cameras turn off. Remember this: America deserves leaders who lift it up, not dynasties that drag it down.